The single-dollar bill landed on my tray with the weight of an insult. I stared at it, crisp, deliberate, mocking, while my hands trembled with rage I couldn't afford to show. Around me, Seoul's most exclusive rooftop restaurant hummed with wealth and whispers, but all I could hear was the thundering of my own heartbeat as Park Min-jae's cold eyes met mine across the table. "Keep the change," he said in perfect English, his voice smooth as aged whiskey and twice as dangerous. The 5 men surrounding him laughed, but there was no humor in it. This wasn't about money, this was about power, about putting an African woman in her place, about reminding me that in his world I was nothing. Something fierce and reckless ignited in my chest, the same fire that had carried me across an ocean, that had survived racism and rejection, that refused to be extinguished. I picked up that dollar, met his gaze with steel in my spine, and made the choice that would either destroy me or set me free. Welcome to our channel. You are special. Before we continue, please hit that like button and subscribe. It truly helps us grow and create more stories like this for you. Your support means everything to this channel. My name is Mirabelle Okafor, and I'd been in Seoul for exactly 8 months when Park Min-jae walked into my life like a storm I never saw coming. I should start at the beginning. I came to South Korea on a scholarship to study international business at Yonsei University. My mother had cried when I left Lagos, happy tears mixed with worried ones. "You're so far from home, my daughter," she'd whispered, holding my face. "But you go and make us proud." I'd tried, God knows I'd tried, but scholarships don't cover living expenses in one of the world's most expensive cities, and my part-time job at Sky Lounge, Seoul's most elite rooftop restaurant, barely kept me afloat. The restaurant sat atop the Lumina Tower in Gangnam, offering panoramic views of Seoul's glittering skyline. It was beautiful and brutal in equal measure. Beautiful because every detail whispered luxury, from the Italian marble floors to the crystal chandeliers that cost more than my entire education. Brutal because I was one of only 2 black employees in a place that catered to Korea's ultra-wealthy, and some customers made sure I never forgot it. "Table 7 needs water," Manager Kim barked in Korean, barely glancing at me. "And smile more. You always look so serious." I bit back the response that I looked serious because I was exhausted, working double shifts while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. Instead, I plastered on a smile that didn't reach my eyes and headed to table 7. That's when I saw him. Park Min-jae sat at the corner table reserved for VIPs, the one with the best view, the most privacy, the kind of table you couldn't get unless you were somebody, and he was definitely somebody. Even sitting, I could tell he was tall, over 6 feet, with the kind of lean, dangerous build that suggested he could hurt you without breaking a sweat. His black hair was styled back from a face that belonged in magazines. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, lips that should have looked soft but somehow didn't. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold. Dark and fathomless, they swept across the restaurant with the casual authority of a man who owned everything he surveyed. When they landed on me, I felt pinned, assessed, and dismissed in the span of a heartbeat. "Excuse me," he said in Korean, his voice carrying that particular Seoul accent that marked old money and older power. "We're ready to order." "Of course, sir." I approached with my notepad, keeping my expression neutral and professional. "What can I get for you?" He switched to English without warning, his pronunciation flawless. "You speak Korean well for a foreigner." It wasn't a compliment. The way he said foreigner made it sound like an accusation. "Thank you, sir." I kept my voice steady. "I've been studying for 2 years. Now, what would you like to order?" A smile ghosted across his lips. Cold. Testing. "The omakase course. And bring us your best soju, the expensive one, not what you serve to tourists." I wrote it down, ignoring the deliberate slight. Excellent choice. That will be the Emperor's selection, aged 20 years. Anything else? That depends. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with unsettling intensity. Are you capable of serving it properly? Or should I request someone more experienced? The men at his table chuckled. My jaw tightened, but I forced my expression to remain pleasant. I'd dealt with casual racism before, the customers who refused to let me touch their food, who complained about that black girl to management, who left without tipping. But something about Park Min-jae's calculated cruelty felt different, more personal, more dangerous. I assure you, sir, I'm quite capable. I met his gaze directly, refusing to look away first. I'll have your drinks out shortly. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. What's your name? Mirabelle, sir. Mirabelle. He said it slowly, like he was tasting the syllables. African. Nigerian, sir. His eyes travelled over me in a way that made my skin prickle, not with attraction, but with the sense of being catalogued, filed away for future use. Interesting. I escaped to the bar, my hands shaking as I put in their order. Jin-ho, the bartender, shot me a sympathetic look. Min-jae again? You know him. Everyone knows him. Jin-ho's voice dropped to a whisper. Park Min-jae, the youngest son of the Park family. They own half of Gangnam, real estate, nightclubs, restaurants. Some people say they're connected to other things you don't talk about. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of things? Jin-ho just shook his head. The kind that make people disappear. Just be careful, Mirabelle. Men like that, they play games with people's lives. I carried their drinks out on my best silver tray, moving with the careful grace I'd perfected over months of serving Seoul's elite. The omakase courses followed, pristine pieces of sashimi, perfectly grilled wagyu, delicate tempura that melted on the tongue. Each plate was a work of art, and each one Park Min-jae found fault with. This tuna is warm, he said, barely glancing at the plate. I'll have chef prepare another immediately, sir. The rice is too vinegared. I'll inform the sushi chef, sir. Your service is slow. My apologies, sir. I'll try to be faster. It went on like that for 2 hours, a systematic dismantling of my professional competence in front of the entire restaurant. Other servers shot me pitying glances. Manager Kim's expression grew increasingly nervous, and Park Min-jae watched it all with those cold, dark eyes, like a scientist observing an experiment. By the time I brought their check, my professional mask was cracking. The bill came to 2.8 million won, about $2,400 USD. Min-jae didn't even glance at it before sliding over his black card. The service tonight was... He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Educational. I processed the payment in silence, my jaw aching from keeping my smile in place. When I returned with his receipt, he signed it with a flourish and stood. His companions rose with him like a well-trained unit. That's when I saw it. On the pristine white tablecloth, centered exactly where his plate had been, sat a single $1 American bill. Not Korean won. $1. The ultimate insult, implying my service wasn't even worth Korean currency. The men were already walking toward the elevator, their laughter carrying across the restaurant. Other diners pretended not to notice, but I could feel their eyes, their judgment, their pity. Something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet internal snap, like the last thread of patience finally giving way. I grabbed that dollar bill, smoothed it flat against my palm, and walked across the restaurant in long, deliberate strides. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my steps didn't falter. Mr. Park! My voice cut through the quiet restaurant like a blade. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Even the elevator seemed to pause. He turned slowly, one eyebrow raised in that perfect arch of surprise mixed with annoyance. Up close, I could see he was younger than I'd thought. maybe 32, with the kind of face that would have been beautiful if it weren't so cold. Yes? His tone suggested I was already boring him. I held out the dollar bill, my hand steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. You dropped this. His eyes narrowed fractionally. That's your tip. No. I kept the bill extended, meeting his gaze directly. This isn't a tip. This is an insult, and I don't accept insults as payment for honest work. The silence in the restaurant was absolute, the kind of silence that comes right before an explosion. One of his men stepped forward, his hand moving toward his jacket, but Min-jae stopped him with a gesture so slight I almost missed it. You're refusing money. Min-jae's voice was soft, dangerous. That's foolish. Maybe. I refused to drop my gaze, but my dignity isn't for sale. Not for $1. Not for any amount. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. It was gone before I could name it. What's your full name? He asked quietly. Mirabelle Okafor. Mirabelle Okafor. He repeated it like before, but differently now, not testing the syllables, learning them. Then he reached out and took the dollar from my hand. His fingers brushed mine for just a second, warm, unexpected, sending an electric jolt up my arm that I immediately tried to suppress. Interesting, he murmured, his eyes never leaving mine. Then he turned and walked into the elevator, the dollar bill still clutched in his hand. The doors closed, the restaurant exhaled, and I stood frozen in the middle of the floor, trembling from adrenaline and terror, and something else I refused to acknowledge. As reality crashed over me in waves, I'd just publicly humiliated one of the most powerful men in Seoul. I was so fired. My office, now! Manager Kim's voice shook with barely controlled rage. The walk to his office felt like a death march, other servers scattered as I passed. Jin-ho gave me a helpless look that said, I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. Manager Kim's office smelled of cigarette smoke and disappointment. He didn't invite me to sit. Do you have any idea what you just did? His face was red, a vein pulsing at his temple. Do you know who that man is? A customer who disrespected me, I said quietly. I gave back his insult. Nothing more. Nothing more? Kim laughed, but there was no humour in it. Park Min-jae owns the building this restaurant sits in. He owns half the restaurants in Seoul. One phone call from him and this place closes. One phone call and I lose everything. I'm sorry, I started, but he cut me off. Sorry doesn't fix this. He pulled out an envelope, already prepared. 2 weeks severance. Consider yourself lucky I'm giving you that much. I took the envelope with shaking hands. 2 weeks severance wouldn't even cover next month's rent, let alone tuition or my mother's medical bills back home. Mr. Kim, please, get out. His voice was final. Collect your things and leave. I don't want to see you here again. 20 minutes later, I stood on the street outside Lumina Tower with a cardboard box containing my uniform and shoes, 400,000 won in severance pay, and the crushing weight of my own stupidity. It was raining because of course it was raining, because when your life falls apart, the universe always adds miserable weather for effect. I started walking toward the subway, my mind already calculating how many weeks I could survive, how I'd explain this to my mother, whether I'd have to drop out of school and return home in failure. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Miss Okafor? The voice was male, professional, speaking English with a slight accent. My name is Choi Jong-woo. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Park Min-jae. My stomach dropped. I don't know any... Mr. Park would like to meet with you tomorrow. 10 a.m. at his office in Lumina Tower. I just lost my job because of him. Why would I... He's prepared to offer compensation for your time. Substantial compensation. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to block this number and never look back. Instead, I heard myself ask, What kind of compensation? 5 million, won for 2 hours of your time. Just a conversation, Miss Okafor. Nothing more. 5 million won. Almost $4,200 USD, more than 2 months' salary. Why? I asked suspiciously. What does he want to talk about? That's for Mr. Park to explain. Are you available tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I should say no. I should hang up and never think about Park Min-jae again. Yes, I whispered. I'll be there. The call ended. I stood in the rain, phone clutched in my hand, wondering what the hell I'd just agreed to. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my tiny Gosiwon room, barely bigger than a closet, with walls so thin I could hear my neighbours breathing, and replayed every moment of the evening. The way Min-jae's eyes had assessed me, the calculated cruelty of that dollar bill, the electric shock when our fingers touched. My roommate from university, Ji-woo, called at midnight. Mirabelle, I heard what happened. Everyone's talking about it. Of course they were. Seoul's service industry was a small world. It was stupid, I admitted, staring at the water-stained ceiling. I lost my job over $1 and my pride. No, it was brave. Ji-woo's voice was fierce. Do you know how many people let men like Park Min-jae treat them like garbage because they're scared? You stood up to him. That's courage. Courage doesn't pay rent. Maybe not, but it's worth something. She paused. What are you going to do? I told her about the meeting tomorrow, the 5 million won offer. Ji-woo sucked in a breath. Mirabelle, be careful. Men like Park Min-jae don't just offer money for conversation. They always want something. I know. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. But as I hung up, I wondered if it was a promise I could keep. Lumina Tower looked different in daylight, less intimidating, more sleek and modern. I dressed carefully for the meeting, my best blazer, modest dress, low heels, professional but not trying too hard. The armour of someone who had something to lose but refused to show it. The receptionist on the 45th floor didn't even blink when I gave my name. Mr. Park is expecting you. Conference room 3 down the hall. The hallway was all glass and chrome, with views of Seoul spreading out like a promise, or a warning. Conference room 3 had a massive table that could seat 20, but only one man sat at the head of it. Park Min-jae. He looked different in daylight too, less like a predator in the darkness, more like... I didn't have words for what he looked like. He wore a fitted black suit with no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone. His hair was slightly less styled than last night, falling forward over his forehead in a way that made him look younger. He stood when I entered, old-fashioned manners that seemed at odds with his calculated cruelty the night before. Miss Okafor, thank you for coming. He gestured to the seat across from him. Please sit. I sat, keeping my spine straight and my expression neutral. Mr. Park, your assistant mentioned compensation for my time. A slight smile touched his lips. Direct, I appreciate that. He slid an envelope across the table. I opened it to find a check for 5 million won, already made out in my name. The money's yours regardless of your answer to what I'm about to propose, he said. I don't buy cooperation. I buy opportunity. What opportunity? He leaned back in his chair, those dark eyes studying me with the same intensity as last night. Last night was a test. I stiffened. A test? I needed to see how you'd react under pressure, under deliberate provocation. His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. Most people fold. They smile and take the abuse because they need the money, the job, the approval. You didn't. So you got me fired on purpose. Anger flared hot in my chest. You destroyed my livelihood to test me. Yes. The casual admission stunned me. You're insane. Possibly. He stood and walked to the windows, hands in his pockets. Or I'm someone who needs to know exactly who I'm dealing with before I make them an offer. What offer? He turned to face me. I want you to work for me. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You just got me fired, and now you want to hire me? That's ridiculous. Is it? He moved closer, and I forced myself not to lean back. I own 17 restaurants in Seoul, Miss Okafor. High-end establishments that cater to Korea's elite, businessmen, politicians, celebrities. I need someone who understands both Korean and international culture, someone who can't be intimidated, someone with integrity. And you think that's me? I know it is. You proved it last night when you gave back that $1. I shook my head. You don't know anything about me. I know you're a third-year business student at Yonsei with a 4.0 GPA. I know you send money home to Lagos every month for your mother's medical treatment. I know you work double shifts while maintaining perfect grades. I know you speak 3 languages fluently and are learning Korean as your 4th. His eyes held mine. I know you're brilliant, hard-working and principled. That's exactly what I need. The fact that he'd investigated me so thoroughly should have scared me. Instead, I felt something else. A dangerous spark of interest. What's the job? Operations manager for my flagship restaurant, Azure. You'd oversee staff, handle VIP clients, manage daily operations. Starting salary is 72 million won annually, plus benefits and bonuses. I nearly choked. 72 million won was, I couldn't even calculate it, more than I'd ever dreamed of making. That's too much, I said, automatically. It's exactly what you're worth. He returned to his seat. But I have conditions. Of course he did. First, you report directly to me, no one else. Second, absolute discretion. What you see and hear in my restaurant stays confidential. Third, he paused, you maintain the same courage you showed last night. If something's wrong, you tell me. If someone needs to be challenged, you challenge them, even me. Especially you, I muttered. That smile again, still cold, but somehow less so. Especially me. I studied him, trying to understand the game. Why me? Why not hire someone Korean? Someone who understands this culture better? Because Koreans understand Korean culture too well. They know the hierarchies, the unspoken rules, the ways to avoid direct confrontation. I need someone who sees clearly because they're outside the system, someone who isn't afraid to tell me the truth, even if that truth makes you uncomfortable. Especially then, I looked at the check in my hand, 5 million won just for listening to this proposal. The job offer would change everything. No more struggling to pay rent, no more double shifts and exhausted late nights. I could send more money home, help my mother, maybe even move to a real apartment instead of a glorified closet. But instinct whispered this was dangerous, that Park Min-jae was dangerous, that accepting this offer meant stepping into a world I didn't understand, with rules I couldn't see. I need time to think, I said. Of course. He stood, and I realized the meeting was over. But, Miss Okafor, don't think too long. Opportunities like this don't wait. At the door, I turned back. Why did you really leave that $1? For the first time, his expression shifted, something almost vulnerable crossing his face before his mask slammed back into place. Because I needed to know if you were real, he said quietly. In my world, everything is performance. Everyone wants something, but you actually have principles. That's rarer than you know. I left without responding, his check burning a hole in my purse and my mind spinning with impossible choices. I gave Park Min-jae my answer 3 days later. Yes, because despite every warning instinct, despite Ji-woo's concern and my own better judgment, I couldn't walk away from the opportunity. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was ambition, maybe it was the dangerous curiosity sparked by those dark, fathomless eyes, or maybe I just needed to prove I could stand in his world without flinching. My first day at Azure was orchestrated chaos. The restaurant occupied 3 floors of a renovated hanok in Bukchon, blending traditional Korean architecture with modern luxury. It was beautiful and intimidating in equal measure. Miss Okafor, a woman in her 40s, approached, her expression professionally neutral. "I'm Han Soo-jin, head manager. Mr. Park asked me to show you around." If she resented my sudden appearance as her new supervisor, she hid it well. Over the next week, Soo-jin taught me everything: the reservation system, the VIP protocols, the staff hierarchy, the 1,000 tiny details that kept Azure running smoothly. I learned that Park Min-jae owned not just restaurants, but nightclubs, hotels, and properties across Seoul, that his family's wealth went back 3 generations, that people whispered about other businesses, vague implications of connections to organized crime, though nothing was ever stated directly. I learned to spot the important guests, the ones who got the best tables without reservations, who were served off-menu items, who left without ever seeing a bill. Government officials, chaebol heirs, people whose power was measured not in money, but in influence. And I learned that Park Min-jae was always watching. He appeared unexpectedly during lunch service on my 5th day, moving through the restaurant with quiet authority. Staff straightened when he passed, conversations hushed, even the air seemed to shift. "Miss Okafor?" He gestured for me to follow him to his private office upstairs. A moment. His office was surprisingly simple. Clean lines, minimal decoration, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seoul skyline. He sat behind a desk of dark wood, gesturing for me to take the chair across from him. "How are you adjusting?" he asked. "Well, I think Soo-jin has been very helpful. She's good at her job." He opened a folder on his desk. "But I want your unfiltered assessment. What have you noticed?" I hesitated. This felt like another test. "Tell me the truth," he said, reading my hesitation. "That's what I hired you for." "The staff is excellent," I began carefully. "But there's a problem with the night shift supervisor, Mr. Kang. He's been skimming from the till. Not much, maybe 200,000 won over the past 2 weeks. And he's been harsh with the younger servers, especially the women." Min-jae's expression didn't change, but something cold entered his eyes. "How do you know this?" "I watch. I listen. People talk more freely around me because I'm foreign. They don't think I understand everything." I met his gaze. "Plus, I checked the nightly reports against the security camera timestamps. The numbers don't match." A long silence. Then, "What do you recommend?" "Fire him. Today. Make it clear why. It sends a message that you won't tolerate theft or abuse. And if he causes problems, he has connections. His uncle is a mid-level politician." I straightened in my chair. "Then he causes problems, but keeping him sends a worse message, that connections matter more than integrity." Min-jae studied me with those fathomless eyes, and I fought the urge to squirm under his scrutiny. Finally, he nodded. "Handle it. You have my full authority." I blinked. "Me? But I've only been here a week. Which means you can do it without the baggage of existing relationships. This is your restaurant to manage, Miss Okafor. Manage it." By 7 p.m, Mr. Kang was gone, escorted out by security with his personal belongings in a box. By 8 p.m, I'd held a staff meeting explaining that integrity was non-negotiable, that everyone, regardless of position or connections, would be held to the same standard. By 9 p.m, when I finally collapsed in Min-jae's office to give him a debrief, I was exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. "You did well," he said, pouring me a glass of water from the pitcher on his desk. "Kang made a scene, but you held firm." "His uncle called," I admitted, "threatened to make trouble. He'll try, he won't succeed." Min-jae's voice was casual, but there was steel beneath it. "I'll handle the political side. You focus on running the restaurant." I sipped the water, studying him over the rim of the glass. "Why do you really do this? The restaurants, I mean. You have money, power, connections. Why bother with the daily operations?" He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. My grandfather started with one small restaurant in Itaewon. My father turned it into an empire, but he stopped, seeming to choose his words carefully. He forgot that real power comes from building something that lasts, not just taking what you want. There was pain there, buried deep. I recognized it because I carried my own. Your father hurt people, I said quietly, not a question. His eyes snapped to mine, sharp and assessing. What makes you say that? The way people talk about your family, the whispers, the fear. I set down the glass. You can't build the kind of empire you have through legitimate business alone, not in Seoul, not in this world. No, he agreed after a moment. You can't. The admission hung between us. Honest, dangerous, binding. So you're trying to be different, I continued. To build something legitimate, something clean, but the shadow of what your father did follows you. Always. His voice was rough. That's why I need people like you, Miss Okafor. People who remind me that there's a line between power and cruelty. People who aren't afraid to tell me when I cross it. Our eyes met and held. Something shifted in the air, a recognition, an understanding, the beginning of something neither of us could name. We should go, he said abruptly, standing. It's late. But as I gathered my things and headed for the door, his voice stopped me. Mirabelle! It was the first time he'd used my first name. It sounded different in his mouth. Softer, more careful. Yes? Thank you for today, for all of it. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and left before I could examine why those simple words made my heart race. 3 weeks passed in a blur of 18-hour days, staff meetings, supplier negotiations, and VIP dinners. I fell into bed exhausted every night and woke energized every morning, driven by the thrill of building something, fixing systems, making Azure not just successful but excellent. And through it all, Park Min-jae was there, not hovering, not micromanaging, but present. He'd appear during lunch service, moving through the dining room with quiet grace. He'd sit in on my staff meetings, asking pointed questions that made everyone think harder. He'd text me at odd hours, observations, suggestions, occasionally dry humour that surprised me with its warmth. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, my fear of him transformed into something more complicated. I noticed small things, the way his expression softened when he talked to the older kitchen staff, who'd known his grandfather, the generous bonuses he gave without fanfare when someone's family faced medical expenses, the way he listened, truly listened when I spoke, like my words mattered more than his own assumptions. But I also saw the other side, the cold authority, when a supplier tried to cheat us. The phone calls he took in English and Mandarin, his voice hard and businesslike in ways that made my instincts whisper danger. The moments when his mask slipped and I glimpsed something darker beneath, the son of a man who'd built power through fear. If you're loving this story so far, please take 2 seconds to like, comment, subscribe and share. It helps us reach more viewers and keeps this content coming. Thank you for being here and supporting the channel. I was reviewing next week's reservations when Min-jae appeared in the doorway of my small office, his expression unreadable. Dinner, he said, with me, tonight. My heart did something complicated. Is this work-related? Does it matter? Yes, I said firmly, even as my pulse quickened. It matters. A slight smile touched his lips, still guarded, but warming. Then let's call it working dinner. There's something I need to discuss. He took me to a small restaurant in Seongbuk-dong, far from the glittering lights of Gangnam. It was the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking. A traditional hanok with paper screens and low tables, serving food that tasted like home-cooked love rather than Michelin-starred precision. My grandmother used to bring me here, Min-jae explained as we settled onto floor cushions. when I needed to escape my father's world. The owner, a woman in her 70s, greeted Min-jae with obvious affection, calling him Min-jae-ya like he was still the boy she'd known decades ago. She brought us dish after dish without being asked: crispy pajeon, spicy tteokbokki, tender braised short ribs that fell off the bone. "This is incredible," I said around a mouthful of kimchi jjigae. "Why don't you open a restaurant like this?" "Because it wouldn't be the same," he said simply. "Some things are meant to stay small, intimate, uncommercialized. Not everything needs to be part of an empire." It was the most unguarded I'd seen him, and I found myself leaning in, drawn by this glimpse of the man beneath the mask. "You said there was something you wanted to discuss," I prompted. His expression shifted, becoming more serious. "I'm opening a new restaurant, not in Seoul, in Busan, high-end, targeting international tourists and Korean elites who summer on the coast. I want you to oversee the opening." Pride and panic warred in my chest. "Min-jae, I've only been with you for a month, and you've increased Azure's efficiency by 30%, improved staff retention, and handled 2 major VIP incidents with more grace than managers I've had for years." His eyes held mine. "You're ready. What if I fail? Then you fail, and we figure out what went wrong and try again." He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. The first time he'd touched me since that electric moment with the dollar bill. "I don't need perfection, Mirabelle. I need someone who cares. Someone who'll work as hard to make it right as I will." His hand was warm, his touch sending sparks up my arm that I tried desperately to ignore. This was professional. This was just business. "When would I start?" I asked, my voice not quite steady. 2 weeks. You'd relocate to Busan for 6 months during the setup and opening, then transition to remote oversight. He paused. "It's a significant commitment." "I'll do it." The words were out before I could second-guess them. Min-jae's smile was slow, genuine, transforming his face from merely handsome to absolutely devastating. "Good," he said softly, and squeezed my hand before letting go. "I'll make the arrangements." As we finished dinner and he drove me home through Seoul's glittering streets, I realized I was in serious trouble, because somewhere between the dollar bill and dinner in Seongbuk-dong, between his tests and my challenges, between professional respect and personal regard, I'd started falling for Park Min-jae, and falling for a man with shadows in his past and danger in his present was the most reckless thing I could possibly do. But as I watched his profile in the dashboard lights, strong and focused and unexpectedly gentle, I realized I didn't care. I was already falling, and there was no way to stop. The move to Busan happened faster than I expected. Within 2 weeks, I was standing in a half-finished restaurant space, overlooking Haeundae Beach, armed with blueprints, supplier contracts, and Min-jae's unwavering confidence that I could pull this off. "The concept is modern Korean-French fusion," he explained, walking me through the empty space. "Targeting wealthy tourists, Korean celebrities, business executives. We're calling it Seoulite, a play on words, soul and elite." "Clever," I admitted, already mentally arranging furniture, planning traffic flow, calculating optimal table spacing. "The chef arrives next week from Paris, Korean-born, Michelin-trained. I've secured permits, hired contractors, arranged your housing." He turned to face me, and in the morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, his eyes looked less black and more warm brown. "Everything you need is in place. Now make it work." It was a challenge and a vote of confidence wrapped together. For the next 3 months, I lived and breathed Seoulite. I hired staff, 32 people, each one carefully interviewed and vetted. I worked with the chef, Kang Ji-yoon, a fierce woman in her 40s, who took no nonsense but respected competence. I negotiated with suppliers, managed contractors, solved 100 small crises each day, And every evening, Min-jae called, not for work updates, he got those via reports. These calls were different. We'd talk about our days, yes, but also about everything else. He told me about his childhood, growing up in the shadow of a father who saw people as tools and loyalty as something bought with fear. I told him about Lagos, about my mother's strength, about the culture shock of Seoul, and the loneliness that sometimes threatened to swallow me whole. "Do you regret coming to Korea?" he asked one night, 3 weeks into my Busan stay. I was sitting on the small balcony of my apartment, watching the ocean shimmer under moonlight. "Sometimes," I admitted, "when people stare at me on the subway, when my Korean fails and I feel stupid, when I miss my mother so badly I can barely breathe. But then what? Then I remember I'm building something, that I'm not just surviving, I'm creating, and that matters more than being comfortable." "You're extraordinary, Mirabelle." His voice was soft, intimate in a way that made my heart skip. "I hope you know that." "I'm just stubborn." "You're brilliant, courageous and determined. That's not the same as stubborn." We were quiet for a moment, the comfortable silence of two people who'd grown used to each other's presence, even separated by distance. "Min-jae," I said carefully, "these calls, they feel like more than professional check-ins." Another pause, longer this time. "They are more," my heart hammered. "How much more?" "I'm trying to figure that out myself." He exhaled slowly. "You're different from anyone I've known, Mirabelle. You see me, not my money, not my reputation, not even the shadow of my father. You see me, and it's terrifying." "Why terrifying?" "Because I'm not sure the man you see is the man I actually am." His voice dropped lower. "There are parts of my life, my past, things I've done. If you knew everything, you might not look at me the same way." I thought about the whispers, the implications of connections to organized crime, the way people feared the Park family name. "I know you're not perfect, Min-jae. I know there are shadows, but I also know you're trying to be better than your father. That counts for something." "Does it? Does trying erase the past?" "No," I said, honestly, "but it creates a different future. That has to be enough." We talked until 2 a.m., neither of us wanting to hang up, both of us dancing around the truth that we were falling for each other and had no idea what to do about it. Seoulite's opening night arrived with the force of a tidal wave. The restaurant glowed like a jewel against Busan's skyline, every surface gleaming, every detail perfection. Ji-yoon's kitchen hummed with military precision. My staff moved like a ballet troupe, and Min-jae stood at the entrance greeting guests, devastatingly handsome in a custom black suit, his hair styled back to reveal the sharp angles of his face. When he saw me, his expression transformed, the professional mask falling away to reveal something raw and real. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, taking in my deep purple dress, my natural hair styled in an elegant updo. "You look nervous," I countered, noticing the tension in his shoulders. "I am. This is important." He glanced at the dining room filling with Busan's elite, celebrities, business magnates, even a minor government minister. "If Seoulite succeeds, it proves we can expand beyond Seoul. If it fails, it won't fail." I touched his arm briefly, ignoring the electricity that sparked between us. "We've thought of everything. Trust the work." His hand covered mine, thumb brushing across my knuckles. "I trust you." The evening was flawless. Ji-yoon's food transcended expectations. Each dish a perfect marriage of Korean technique and French elegance. Service flowed smoothly. Guests praised everything from the ambience to the wine selection to the spectacular ocean views. By 11 p.m., when the last guests departed and the staff was cleaning up, I was riding a wave of exhausted triumph. "We did it," I said, collapsing into a chair near the windows. Min-jae joined me, loosening his tie and looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. You did it. This was your vision, your execution. I just wrote the checks. Don't diminish your contribution. I smiled at him. You built the foundation. I just decorated it. We sat in comfortable silence, watching Busan's lights reflect off the water. Then Min-jae turned to me, and the intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. Mirabelle, I need to tell you something. My heart rate picked up. What? These past 3 months have been the hardest and best of my life. Hard because I've wanted to be here with you instead of in Seoul. Best because every night when we talk, I feel like I can breathe properly for the first time. Min-jae, let me finish. He shifted to face me fully. I know this is complicated. I'm your employer, I have a past I'm not proud of, and there are parts of my family's business that would horrify you, but I can't keep pretending this is purely professional. I care about you, more than I should, more than is smart. Everything I'd been feeling for months surged to the surface. I care about you too, but you're right. This is complicated. The power dynamic alone. What if it wasn't? What if you weren't just my employee? What if we were partners, real partners, equal in every way? How would that even work? I want to give you partial ownership of Azure and Soulite, not as a gift, as compensation for the work you've already done. You've earned it. His hand found mine, lacing our fingers together. And I want to see where this goes, between us, if you're willing to take the risk. I stared at him, heart pounding. Everything logical screamed this was dangerous, unprofessional, a disaster waiting to happen, but my heart whispered something different. Yes, I said simply. His smile was sunrise breaking through clouds. Yes? Yes to all of it. Partnership. Whatever this is between us, the risk. I squeezed his hand. I'm all in, Min-jae. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. Our lips met in a kiss that was everything I'd imagined and nothing I could have prepared for, tender and fierce, careful and desperate, the culmination of months of denied attraction and growing emotion. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. I promise I'll protect you, whatever happens, whatever comes from my world into yours, I'll keep you safe. I don't need protecting, I murmured. I need partnership, honesty, someone who sees me as an equal. You are my equal. His hand cupped my face. In every way that matters, Mirabelle. You're my equal. We kissed again, and I felt the future shift, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of transitioning Soulite to its permanent management team, finalizing partnership paperwork, and stolen moments with Min-jae that felt both innocent and intensely intimate. Long dinners where we talked until dawn, walking along Haeundae Beach holding hands like teenagers, kisses that left me breathless and wanting more. But danger was coming. I just didn't know it yet. The first warning came via a phone call from Soo-jin at Azure. Miss Okafor, we have a situation. There are men here asking questions about you. They're not police, but they're intimidating. Ice flooded my veins. What kind of questions? Where you live, who you're close to, your schedule. They flashed money around, tried to bribe staff for information. She lowered her voice. I told them nothing, but Miss Okafor, I'm worried. These men, they feel dangerous. I called Min-jae immediately. He was in Seoul for business meetings, not returning to Busan until tomorrow. Someone's investigating you, I said, without preamble. Soo-jin said men are asking questions at Azure. Min-jae, what's going on? His silence stretched too long. When he spoke, his voice was tight with controlled fury. Stay in your apartment. Don't go out. I'm sending security. They'll be there in 20 minutes. What's happening? My past is catching up. His voice was rough. I'll explain everything when I see you, but right now, please trust me. Stay safe. Don't open the door for anyone except the security team I'm sending. 2 hours later, my doorbell rang. I checked the peephole to see 2 burly men in dark suits, one holding identification showing they worked for a private security firm. "Miss Okafor, Mr. Park sent us." I let them in. They swept my apartment with professional efficiency, checking windows, examining locks, setting up some kind of security system I didn't fully understand. "You're safe now," the taller one said in accented English. "We'll be posted in the hallway. Mr. Park will arrive tomorrow morning." I didn't sleep. I sat curled on my couch, phone clutched in my hand, mind spinning with possibilities. Who was looking for me? Why? What had Min-jae gotten me involved in? He arrived at 7 a.m., dishevelled from the overnight drive, his expression grim. "Tell me everything," I demanded before he could speak. "No more secrets, Min-jae. If I'm in danger, I deserve to know why." He sank onto my couch, looking older than his 32 years. My father's business wasn't just restaurants and real estate. He controlled other operations, protection rackets, illegal gambling, some smuggling, nothing violent like drugs or human trafficking, but not legal, not clean. My stomach tightened. "And you?" "I inherited everything when he died 5 years ago. I've been systematically shutting down the illegal operations, moving assets into legitimate businesses, but some of my father's old associates aren't happy about it. They see me as weak, a betrayal of my father's legacy. Who's looking for me? A man named Choi Dong-hwan. He ran my father's gambling operations. I shut him down 6 months ago, offered him a severance package to retire quietly. He refused." Min-jae's hands clenched into fists. "He's been trying to force me back into the family's old business, and now he knows about you." Terror and anger warred in my chest. "You should have told me." "I know. I was trying to keep you separate, safe, but Choi is sending a message that no one close to me is untouchable." His eyes met mine, filled with regret and determination. "I'm sorry, Mirabelle. This is my fault." What does he want? To force my hand, to make me choose between you and going back to my father's ways. Min-jae stood abruptly, pacing. "But I won't let him hurt you, and I won't become my father." "What's your plan?" He stopped pacing, turned to face me. "I'm meeting with Choi tomorrow, with witnesses in a public place. I'll make him understand that threatening you will have consequences he can't afford." "That sounds dangerous." "It is, but it's necessary." He moved closer, his hands framing my face with devastating gentleness. "You have a choice, Mirabelle. Walk away from all of this. From me, from the restaurants, from this complicated, dangerous mess I've dragged you into. I'll give you everything I promised and more. You'll be safe. Or stay. Trust me to handle this. Let me protect you while I clean up the last pieces of my father's legacy." His thumb brushed my cheekbone. "But I need you to understand what you're choosing. This isn't just dating, it's stepping into my world completely, and my world has danger." I thought about everything that had brought me here, the dollar bill, the restaurant openings, the late-night conversations, the way he looked at me like I mattered more than anything. I thought about what walking away would mean, how it would feel to always wonder, what if? "I'm staying," I said firmly, "but on one condition. Anything. You don't protect me by keeping secrets. You protect me by keeping me informed. We're partners, Min-jae. That means I handle things with you, not behind some wall you've built to keep me safe." Relief and respect warred in his expression. "Partners," he agreed, "in everything." The meeting with Choi Dong-hwan happened the next evening at a traditional restaurant in Busan's old quarter. Min-jae insisted I stay away. But I wasn't about to let him face danger alone. I watched from a corner booth, dressed inconspicuously, my presence unknown to everyone except Min-jae. He sat across from Choi, a man in his 50s with cold eyes and the kind of smile that never reached his face. They spoke in Korean, but I'd learned enough over the past year to follow the gist. "Your father would be ashamed," Choi said, his voice carrying despite the restaurant's noise. "Turning his empire into restaurants and hotels, legitimate business for legitimate people." "My father built an empire on fear," Min Jae replied calmly. "I'm building one on respect. There's a difference." "You're building weakness," Choi leaned forward. "And that African girl you're parading around, she's made you soft, vulnerable." I saw Min Jae's hands clench under the table, but his voice remained controlled. "Leave her out of this." "Why should I? She's the perfect leverage." "You care about her more than your father ever cared about anything. That makes her valuable." Min Jae's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. "If you touch her, if you even think about touching her, I will destroy everything you have left. Your business, your reputation, your family. I will erase you so completely that people will forget you ever existed." Choi laughed. "Empty threats from an empty man." "Try me," Min Jae stood. "This is your only warning, Choi. Walk away, take the severance I offered and disappear, or I'll use every connection, every resource, every ounce of power my father built to ensure you regret threatening what's mine." The possessiveness in his voice sent a complicated thrill through me. Equal parts feminist objection and primitive satisfaction. Choi stood as well, his smile fading. "You think you're different from your father, but when someone threatens what you love, you sound exactly like him. That coldness, that threat, that's Park blood. You can't escape it." He walked out, leaving Min Jae standing alone at the table, his expression haunted. I made my way to him, ignoring the startled looks from other diners. When he saw me, relief and frustration warred on his face. "You were supposed to stay at the apartment, and you were supposed to trust me as a partner." I touched his arm. "Come on, let's go home." In the car, he was silent, his hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. Finally, he spoke. "Choi was right about one thing. When he threatened you, I became my father. All that coldness, that willingness to destroy him, that's who I come from. What if I can't be better? What if I'm fooling myself?" I waited until we were back at my apartment, door closed against the world, before I answered. "You're not your father," I said firmly. "Your father would have had Choi killed for disrespect. You gave him a warning and a way out. That's not the same thing." It felt the same. Because you're human. Because when someone threatens someone you love, you react with emotion. But you didn't act on it, Min Jae. You controlled it. I cupped his face, forcing him to look at me. "That's the difference. That's why you're not him." He pulled me against him, holding on like I was the only thing keeping him anchored. "I don't know what I did to deserve you." "You gave me $1 bill," I said against his chest. "And then you gave me a chance to prove myself. That's what you did." He laughed, a real laugh that shook both of us. When he pulled back to look at me, his eyes were warm again. The haunted look fading. "Mirabelle Okafor," he said softly. "I'm in love with you." My heart stopped, restarted, threatened to burst from my chest. "Say that again. I love you. I'm completely, terrifyingly in love with you." His hands framed my face. "I know it's fast. I know this is complicated, but I've never been more certain of anything." "I love you too," I whispered. "Even though you're infuriating and overprotective and have the worst track record with honest communication." He kissed me to shut me up, and I kissed him back with everything I had. This wasn't the careful kiss from Solight's opening or the tentative explorations on Hyundai Beach. This was claiming and surrender, promise and passion. Two people choosing each other despite every complication. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Stay with me tonight," he murmured, "not because of danger or security, Just because I want to fall asleep with you and wake up with you and pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist. Yes, I said simply, and we did. The next morning should have brought relief. Instead, it brought a phone call that made Min-jae's face go pale. What is it? I asked, watching him pace the balcony, his voice low and tense in rapid Korean. When he hung up, his expression was grim. Choi didn't leave. That was a decoy. Someone who looked like him flying to Japan. He's still in Busan, and he has information about you that he's threatening to release. My stomach dropped. What information? Your visa status. He's claiming you've been working illegally, that your student visa doesn't cover full-time restaurant management. Min-jae's jaw clenched. It's a lie, but if he files a complaint with immigration, it'll take months to sort out. They could deport you while the investigation happens. Terror flooded through me. Can he actually do that? He has connections in immigration offices, corrupt ones who'd fast-track a deportation to cause me problems. Min-jae pulled me against him. I won't let that happen, but we need to act fast. Over the next 3 days, Min-jae worked his own connections, lawyers, government officials, people who owed him favors. I watched him transform into someone I'd only glimpsed before, ruthlessly efficient, coldly calculating, wielding power with the same precision his father had, but for a different purpose. To protect rather than control. It was terrifying and fascinating in equal measure. On the third evening, I found him in his office at Seoul long after closing, surrounded by documents and empty coffee cups. You haven't eaten, I said, bringing him food from the kitchen. Not hungry. Min-jae, I set the plate down firmly. You're going to make yourself sick. I can't, his voice cracked. If I lose you because of my past, because of my father's legacy, I'll never forgive myself. I moved around the desk and turned his chair to face me. Look at me. You're not going to lose me. We're going to figure this out together, but you have to take care of yourself. How are you so calm? He pulled me onto his lap, burying his face in my neck. How are you not terrified? I am terrified, I admitted. But I'm also furious and determined. This is Choi's last desperate move. We just need to outlast him. He held me tighter. I love you so much. You know that, right? Whatever happens, nothing's going to happen. We're not giving him that power. The breakthrough came the next morning. Min-jae's lawyer had found evidence that Choi had been bribing government officials for years, including the immigration officers he was using to threaten me. More than that, Choi had been involved in a smuggling operation that Min-jae's father had shut down years ago. The evidence had been sitting in old business files, waiting to be discovered. If he tries to move against you, Min-jae explained, his eyes bright with relief and something darker, I'll release this to prosecutors. He'll be in prison before the deportation paperwork even processes. That's blackmail, I said carefully. Yes. He didn't flinch from it. I said I'd protect you. This is how I do it. Min-jae, I know it's not noble. I know it's using the same tactics my father used, but Mirabelle, when it comes to you, I don't care about being noble. I care about keeping you safe. I saw the conflict in his eyes, the war between the man he wanted to be and the man he'd been raised to become. What if there's another way? What do you mean? What if instead of threatening Choi, we offer him a different deal? Not money, he clearly doesn't care about that. But what if we offer him legitimacy? Min-jae frowned. I'm not following. Choi's spent his whole life in your father's shadow, running illegal operations, looking over his shoulder. What if we offer to bring him into our legitimate businesses? Give him a position, a salary, a chance to rebuild his reputation, make him more valuable to us as a partner than as an enemy. That's... Min-jae stared at me. That's brilliant, or insane, possibly both. It's risky, I admitted, but it means you don't have to become your father to protect me. It means we offer grace instead of threats. He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching mine. You're asking me to trust a man who threatened you. I'm asking you to give him a choice, the same choice you're trying to make every day. between the past and a better future. Maybe that's all anyone needs, a choice and someone willing to believe they can take it. 3 days later, we sat across from Choi Dong-hwan in the same restaurant where Min-jae had threatened him. But this time, the atmosphere was different. Min-jae laid out our proposal, a position as operations consultant for the restaurant group, legitimate salary, profit sharing, and most importantly, a chance to rebuild his reputation in the business community. "Why would you offer me this after I threatened your woman?" Choi asked, suspicious. "Because I'm trying to be better than my father," Min-jae said honestly, "and because someone reminded me that destroying enemies is easy, building partnerships is harder but more lasting." Choi looked at me, his expression unreadable. "You're the one who convinced him." "I suggested it," I said carefully, "but the decision was his, just like this decision is yours." For a long moment, Choi didn't speak. Then slowly, he nodded. "My whole life I've worked in shadows, doing things I'm not proud of because I thought that was the only way to survive. Your father taught me that, but maybe," he looked at Min-jae, "maybe you're teaching something different." "I'm trying," Min-jae said quietly. "Then I'll try too." Choi extended his hand. "Partners?" Min-jae shook it. "Partners. But if you ever threaten her again, the evidence I have goes straight to prosecutors. That part isn't negotiable." Choi smiled, a real smile this time. "Fair enough. I wouldn't expect less." Walking out of that restaurant, Min-jae pulled me close, kissing the top of my head. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "You left $1 on my table," I reminded him, "and I was stubborn enough to give it back. Best investment I ever made." Over the next few weeks, Choi proved himself valuable. His decades of experience in operations, his connections throughout Busan's business community, his surprising loyalty once given genuine respect rather than fear. He became an unlikely ally, and eventually something close to a friend. "You changed him," Ji-woo told me months later. "Not just Min-jae, Choi too. Even the way your staff talks about working for the park restaurants. It's different now. Less fear, more pride." "Min-jae did that," I protested. "Min-jae started it. You showed him how." She smiled. "That's partnership, Mirabelle. You make each other better." And we did. Over the following months, we built our life together. I split my time between Seoul and Busan, overseeing Azure and Soulite, while Min-jae worked on opening 2 more restaurants, one in Incheon, one in Jeju. But the transition wasn't seamless. There were nights when Min-jae woke up in a cold sweat, nightmares about his father, about Choi, about losing me. There were days when the pressure of running an empire while trying to be better than his legacy threatened to crush him. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted one particularly difficult evening after a disastrous meeting with investors who'd heard rumours about his father's connections. "Every time I think I'm free of the past, it comes back. Maybe I'm fooling myself thinking I can ever be anything other than Park Jae-won's son." We were in our Seoul apartment, and I'd found him standing at the windows, staring out at the city he was trying to conquer through legitimate means. "You're not him," I said firmly, moving to stand beside him. "You know how I know?" "How?" "Because he never would have given Choi a second chance. He never would have asked me what I thought. He never would have admitted fear or doubt." I turned him to face me. "Min-jae, you're building something your father never could. Respect that isn't based on fear. That's not easy and it won't happen overnight, but you're doing it. What if it's not enough? Then we figure out what else needs to happen. Together, that's what partners do." He pulled me against him, and we stood like that for a long time, his arms wrapped around me like I was the only solid thing in a shifting world. The business challenges kept coming. A food blogger with 2 million followers posted a scathing review of Azure, claiming the quality had declined. A celebrity chef we'd tried to recruit for our Jeju location went to a competitor instead. A kitchen fire at Seoulite caused $200,000 in damage and forced us to close for 3 weeks of repairs. Each crisis tested us differently. I learned to handle the operational nightmares, while Min Jae managed the financial and political complications. We fought sometimes, heated arguments about priorities, about risk tolerance, about his tendency to make decisions without consulting me and my tendency to challenge him in front of staff. "You undermined me in that meeting," he said after a particularly contentious staff discussion where I disagreed with his proposed menu changes. "I disagreed with you. That's not the same thing. In front of 15 people. That makes me look weak." "No, it makes us look like a team that values honest debate over hierarchy." I crossed my arms. "You said you wanted a partner who'd challenge you. Was that a lie?" He stopped, ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "I want both. Partnership and respect. Then show me the same respect you're demanding. Don't make unilateral decisions about our restaurants and expect me to just smile and agree. That's not partnership, Min Jae. That's you treating me like a pretty accessory." The words landed like a slap. He stared at me, hurt and anger warring on his face. Then slowly the fight drained out of him. "You're right. I'm sorry." He sank onto the couch. "I fall back into old patterns. Control everything, trust no one, make all the decisions. It's how I survived in my father's world. But you're not my employee anymore. You're my equal. I need to act like it." I sat beside him. "And I need to remember that you're learning. You're breaking patterns that were 30 years in the making. That takes time." He took my hand, lacing our fingers together. "How do you always know what to say?" "I don't. Half the time I'm terrified I'm making things worse." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "But I love you, and I believe in us. So I keep trying. I love you too, even when I'm an arrogant idiot. Especially when you're an arrogant idiot. Makes my life interesting." He laughed, pulling me closer. "God help us both." But we learned, slowly, sometimes painfully. We learned to be true partners. Min Jae started consulting me before major decisions. I started trusting him to handle things without my oversight. We developed a rhythm, a shorthand, the kind of synchronicity that comes from choosing to grow together instead of apart. The restaurants thrived under our combined management. Azure maintained its Michelin star. Seoulite became Busan's hottest reservation. The Incheon location opened to rave reviews. Jeju followed 6 months later, instantly becoming the island's most sought-after dining destination. With success came visibility, magazine profiles, television interviews, invitations to speak at business conferences. The media loved our story, the Nigerian woman and the reformed chaebol heir, building an empire together. Not everyone loved it. We faced racism, both subtle and overt. Customers who refused to be served by me, business partners who directed all questions to Min Jae even when I was clearly in charge. Online comments questioning whether I was really qualified or just Min Jae's exotic accessory. "Ignore them," Jiwoo advised after a particularly brutal article in a conservative newspaper. "They're dinosaurs afraid of change." But ignoring them was harder than it sounded. Each comment, each slight, each moment of being dismissed because of my skin colour in a country that could be casually racist wore me down in ways I tried not to show. Min Jae noticed anyway. "We're pulling the interview," he said after reading the comments on a major news portal about our latest profile. "What? No, that gives them power. They called you horrible things, Mirabelle. Slurs. Suggestions that you're only with me for money or status." His jaw clenched. "I won't subject you to that. If we stop every time someone says something racist, we stop existing in public. Is that what you want? I want you safe, happy, not reading comments that say..." He stopped, too angry to continue. I took his face in my hands. Min-jae, look at me. This isn't new. I've faced racism my whole time in Korea. Your protection can't shield me from people's prejudices. What you can do is stand beside me and not flinch. Show them we're not going anywhere. I hate that you have to deal with this. I know, but we deal with it together. That's the only way forward. So we did. We gave more interviews, made more public appearances, refused to hide our relationship or my role in the business. Slowly, perceptions began to shift, not universally, never universally, but enough. People started seeing our success as evidence that Seoul was changing, becoming more international, more open. My mother visited again 2 years after the dollar bill incident, staying for a month this time. She'd grown fond of Min-jae, treating him like the son she'd never had. He's good to you, she said one evening while we prepared dinner in our apartment kitchen. Min-jae was at a business meeting, giving us time alone. Not just providing, truly good. He sees you. He does, I agreed, even when I don't want to be seen. That's real love, my daughter, not the easy parts. Anyone can love you when you're perfect, but loving you when you're difficult, when you're scared, when you're at your worst, that's the kind of love that lasts. Were you scared when I moved so far away? Terrified. She chopped vegetables with practiced efficiency, but also proud. You took your fear and turned it into courage. That's the Okafor way. Mama, what if we have children someday? Mixed children in Korea, it won't be easy for them. She set down her knife, turned to face me fully. Nothing worth having is easy, Mirabelle. You know this. Your children will be strong because they have strong parents. They'll face challenges, yes, but they'll also have love, opportunity, parents who chose to build something beautiful despite the obstacles. That's more than many children have. Her words stayed with me long after she returned to Lagos. We fought sometimes about business decisions, about his tendency to overprotect, about my stubbornness, but we always came back together, choosing partnership over pride. Ji-woo became my closest friend in Seoul, often joining us for dinners where she'd tease Min-jae mercilessly, and he'd take it with good humour. Soo-jin warmed to me over time, eventually admitting she'd been sceptical at first, but now saw I was the real deal. My mother came to visit from Lagos, and Min-jae won her over completely within an hour, speaking the few Igbo phrases I'd taught him and treating her with the respect and warmth she deserved. He loves you, she told me one evening when Min-jae had gone to take a business call. Not just for your beauty or your intelligence. He loves your spirit. That's the best kind of love. 1 year after the dollar bill incident, Min-jae took me back to that restaurant in Seongbuk-dong, the one with the grandmother who'd known him as a boy. We ate the same dishes, sat at the same table, but everything was different. I have something for you, he said when we finished dinner. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and my heart stopped. Min-jae, this isn't what you think. Well, it is, but also it's not. He opened the box to reveal not a ring, but a folded piece of paper. Look at it. I unfolded the paper carefully. It was the original dollar bill, the one he'd left as an insult. The one I'd returned with my dignity, intact. He'd kept it all this time, preserved in plastic. That dollar changed my life, he said quietly. It showed me someone who couldn't be bought, who valued integrity over comfort, who saw me as just a man instead of a name or a wallet. So I kept it as a reminder. A reminder of what? That I wanted to be worthy of that woman's respect. He took my hand. Mirabelle, you've made me better. Not perfect. I'll never be perfect. But better than I was. Better than I thought I could be. And I want to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you. Now he pulled out another box. This one containing a ring. Simple, elegant. A single diamond that caught light like captured starlight. Marry me, he said. Not quite a question. Not quite a command. Be my partner in everything. Build this life with me. Tears streamed down my face as I nodded. Yes, obviously yes. His smile was pure joy as he slid the ring onto my finger. Then he kissed me, and the grandmother who owned the restaurant started clapping, which made us both laugh against each other's lips. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony overlooking Haeundae Beach, where Seoulite had brought us together. My mother flew in from Lagos. Min Jae's handful of close friends attended. Ji Woo was my maid of honor, and the grandmother from Seongbuk-dong catered the entire event, refusing payment and crying through the whole ceremony. "You've made him soft," she told me during the reception, but she was smiling. In the best way. He smiles now. Before you, I don't think I ever saw him truly smile. 3 years after that dollar bill changed everything, I stood in the kitchen of our penthouse making breakfast, while Min Jae worked on his laptop at the island counter. We'd opened 6 more restaurants across Korea. I'd finished my degree and started consulting with other restaurant groups. Min Jae had completely transitioned out of his father's old business, building a legitimate empire that employed hundreds. "I got an email from the Seoul Business Journal," he said, not looking up from his screen. "They want to interview us about the restaurant empire. You specifically, they want to feature the African woman who changed Seoul's dining scene." I moved to stand beside him, wrapping my arms around his shoulders from behind. "Only if they include the man who was brave enough to test me with a dollar bill." He tilted his head back to kiss me. "Worst and best decision I ever made." "Just best," I corrected. "Everything worked out. Thanks to you. Thanks to us. Partners, remember?" "In everything," he agreed, pulling me around to sit on his lap. "In absolutely everything." And as Seoul's skyline sparkled beyond our windows, as our restaurants hummed with life across the country, as the dollar bill sat framed on our wall, a reminder of how far we'd come, I thought about the girl who'd arrived in Korea scared and determined, who'd faced racism and rejection and a man who'd tried to humiliate her. That girl had given back $1 and changed everything, not just her own life, but the life of a man who'd thought he was beyond redemption. Together, we'd built an empire not on fear or money or connections, but on respect, partnership, and the courage to demand better from ourselves, from each other, from the world we were creating. That dollar bill had bought something neither of us expected, a future built on love, integrity, and the revolutionary idea that 2 people from different worlds could choose each other and make it work. And we had. $1 at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of courage at a time, together. Thank you for watching till the very end. You are the best. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more Afro-Korean romance content. Drop a comment telling me where you are watching from.